QAC TV 7. This meeting is also being streamed live over the internet at www.qac.org/live. These media broadcasts provide county citizens an opportunity to watch and review our scheduled public sessions. We acknowledge your participation, and by attending, you acknowledge that this session is both recorded and aired. The scheduled agenda is available on the information table just outside the meeting room. Press and public comments will be taken and is limited to 3 minutes. If you care to speak, you must sign the sheet on the information table outside. Comments longer than 3 minutes can be submitted in writing for the Commissioner's review. During the meeting, we would ask that you turn your cell phones and pagers off and hold personal conversations and comments outside of the meeting room. We will now stand and be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Commission President Jim Moran.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You can remain standing for a minute for a moment of silence to our servicemen and women abroad. Thank you very much.
Okay, Commissioners, the agenda for today's meeting, June 25th, 2019, along with the minutes from your June 11th Commissioners meeting have been distributed electronically for your review. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, can we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. That brings us to our first press and public comment period. Thank you for taking the time to express your views to the County Commissioners during our press and public comment period. Comments are limited to 3 minutes in length. Comments longer than 3 minutes should be submitted in writing. When you come forward, please speak clearly at the standing microphone, state your name, address, and topic of interest. Keeping with the dignity of the office, we ask that all views be expressed in a respectful and civil manner. This commission respects your desire and right to convey your message freely, but asks as a courtesy to this board and our citizens that you respect the commissioner's request and refrain from naming citizens and name-calling when offering any critique.
Okay, we've got a full sheet here. We'll start with Dan Jarzinski.
Commissioners, good afternoon. I'm not Dan Jarzinski. I'm Don Gross.
He's a little shorter guy.
Okay.
But Dan has consented because of time constraints to switch places with me.
Okay.
The subject of my visit today is the same as it was in November last year when I addressed the group, some familiar faces, some new faces, regarding the speed limit on the lower point of Bennett Point Road and what used to be the passing zones on Bennett Point Road. Over the past 2 years, during which I've worked on this particular subject, gathering facts, soliciting public opinion, gaining signatures via petition, I've come to appreciate the job that you all must do in making any change. It's a big deal. It's not easy. There's always a fight. But you know, you march on and do the job of the county, and we appreciate that very much. But that is precisely why I'm here today. In 2004, when the speed limit was abruptly changed from 50 to 35, there was no due process. There was no solicitation of public opinion. I know I was a citizen then. I didn't know anything about it. I drove to work one day at 50 miles per hour, and on the way home that evening, back from work, I was pulled over for speeding again for doing 50 miles an hour. The signs had been changed without notice of any kind and without discussion among the community. And I'm here to respectfully ask that you move on not reestablishing 50 as the speed limit, but 45. There's been, pardon me, there's been an increase in traffic, I understand that. 45, I think, is a safe and reasonable speed limit. And I know that because every day I'm fortunate enough to be stuck behind the wagon train of school buses that ply Bennett Point Road. You know, they pick up the kids and drop off the kids to school and do so safely. Well, as I follow them up and down Bennett Point Road, when they get to the open stretches where they're not making a stop every 50 feet, they're doing 45 or 50 miles an hour. Every day I see this. It's not an opinion, it's a statement of fact. The second topic, very briefly, is the passing zones. passing zones, which once existed on Bennett Point Road, were covered when the road was resurfaced in 2016 roughly. And when the striping crew came out after resurfacing, apparently they had run out of striped paint. Everything was painted solid from that point on. There were no more passing zones. I met with Shane Moore, Public Works, and he conceded that it was an omission on the part of the striping crew and that it would be corrected. Well, that was 3 years ago, still waiting. So again, respectfully ask your consideration and action on this important topic, not to the county so much, but certainly to the hundreds of residents along the Bennett Point Road corridor. My time's up. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Dan Jarzon.
Jeannie Noble?
Can I stand? I was on top of the list. Don took my.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I thought he meant you weren't here at all. I'm
No,
sorry.
no, no,
Okay.
no. I was, basically, I gave Don has a meeting tonight. I have to parrot what Don said. I've been there 35 years. The speed limit change from 50 to 35 was just ridiculous. It's a single lane road, the only off and on the peninsula. When the original change was made, state came down. I think if Shane's still here, he can probably verify. He requested the state do a radar study on that road. The state radar study said that the Bennett Point Road speed limit should be at least 40. It is now 35. A lot of people are violating it, and all we're asking is to make everything legal. So, would appreciate your consideration, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now Jeannie Noble.
Thank you, gentlemen. I decided to read this proposal that you all might have seen because it's short so that the whole community knows what the proposal was. My husband and I would like to purchase the Christ Church and its environs for many purposes. Our objective would be to care for and use this fine and beautiful old church for multiple and varied businesses and uses. A little bit nervous. Such as for the sanctuary, for meetings and classes, other services, and all denominations of services, small concerts, family movie nights, and as a community center that all of us in the historic district could enjoy. It's for the community center, and we would be like caretakers of the church and manage the social hall and the rectory and keep it up and repaired so that we could have visiting plays and songs and movie nights for children or movie afternoons. It could be a guest house. The rectory could be a guest house for visiting people that would sing or speak, or for speeches or small one-act, two-act plays that would be in the sanctuary. And the sanctuary would always be protected as a very, very beautiful edifice as it is, a church. I have an art background all my life, and you know how everybody felt, I think universally, when Notre Dame went up in flames a few weeks ago. And you don't have to be of a certain religion to appreciate the beauty of these fine edifices. And we would maintain that beauty, and we would have weddings again that maybe could have small weddings, the services in the church, and then go to the Chesapeake Bay House for beach club. Well, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little nervous, for the big receptions as we've had in the past. And I think with more families moving in, we need more attention to the art center, the art community, and culture is very important to all of us. All the children will be growing up, and they need the culture and to continue and make a good community. So I hope you would consider my husband, James, and my proposal, Jeannie Noble. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Diane Ryan.
Hello. Thank you for listening to me again. I know you've heard my proposal several times, but I do want to reiterate that we've been here at the building for 8 years. We have a very successful preschool, which is what the community needs and wants. We have given you a proposal that will help the young community, such as doing art classes, such as doing, working with KIFA, giving them the ability to also do their art displays. We also want to continue to preserve the sanctuary and keep it to be used for community events, such as weddings or meetings. So we will continue to preserve it. Additionally, we have guaranteed revenue. It's not a new business starting up. It's guaranteed revenue that's going to be able to afford to take care of this wonderful building that we have used for many years. In addition to that, we have already started and spoken with several people and contractors to, as soon as possible, get started and start working on the back part of the building, which is where we hold the preschool, and we're ready to start and revamping it and updating it so we can even continue to have even more students. We're ready and willing. It is the Children's Center for Learning and Arts that is a nonprofit. Being a nonprofit, we'll be able to get grants. We'll be able to hold fundraisers that we plan on to help continue preserving the sanctuary. And this is the right thing to do for our community. This is what our community wants. We want to continue having the preschool. We want the preschool to grow, to give more of a chance for more people in our community to have a preschool instead of just a daycare center that parents who are working are limited to, from children 2 through 5. And I thank you for listening to me, and I hope we do the right thing. Thank you.
Okay, Nancy Cook.
Good evening. You see me here again, and I have come to talk to you again about the Friends of Historic Christ Church. Just last Wednesday, we had 90 visitors to our community. That brought in lots of money because they ate at different restaurants, and they were also shopping at the different shops. But they were from Baltimore, and they were really pleased to be presented the history of Kent Island. They met in our church. They could not, the Friends of Historic Christ Church there, the Christ Episcopal, and they were so pleased and awed by the history that they heard and by the architecture. Since 2003, we have been doing this and providing tours for people coming to our community, therefore making money for Queen Anne's County. We need to tell you that. And so we have been providing weddings, we have been providing tours and plays and music events. We'd like to keep doing that. And so again, since 2003, that committee has shown good stewardship of the finances, of the administration, and the other responsibilities that we have had as your commission. And so we ask you again to let us have a little bit of free reign. We know we have lots of work to do on that church. It needs to be painted. We have lots of expenses. But as a 501c group, we are able to ask for lots of grants. And we hope that we can continue to perpetuate the history and heritage of Kent Island and of Queen Anne's County by having that space be a good community center. And thank you for listening to me at least 20 times. I thank you so much.
Thank you. Diane Kuhn, is that how you pronounce it? Oh, great, thanks. Yep.
Oh, excuse me. I'm Diana Kieran. This is my son Michael. We also have put in a bid. We are looking to also preserve Christ Church as best as possible. We do want to run a coffee house that is community-centric. We would like to have the events. My older son, who is not able to be here this evening, spent a good amount of time working at PRS, so he has lots of local artist connections. I'm familiar with Kifa. I have friends that are local artists. So we have all those things in our bid proposal. I think that it's advantageous to have a business. I have been a business owner for almost 20 years, a successful business owner. I have had 3 startup businesses. I do real estate title work, ups and downs, highs and lows, and here we are. So I think that speaks to the ability to ebb and flow through the changes. Our vision for a coffee house and a community-centric environment is something that will draw people into downtown Stevensville. When we drive through there, which is a pretty regular thing, we've been at this for over a year now. We had a contract on another property that didn't work out, so we've been at this for a long time, trying to find a place. Where we come from is a little cobblestone town. I mean, and they've completely redone it. We were a part of that. Well, he was little, but I was part of that. And I think that's my vision. I see that we change the dynamic that is downtown Stevensville in that historic district. And you get the foot traffic, and you get the little cafes where people can sit outside, and the cool little shops, and you have to change it. It's a process to change that. We also love the history. We don't want to change too much, really preserve it. So the tours would be open all the time for the tours, not the minimum requirement for the easement, like 35 hours a year or something. It would be always available. Also weddings, somebody else had mentioned weddings. I think that's in our proposal too. So anyway, we really hope that our proposal is considered. We're ready to settle. My title work's done. Just as a little side note. So thank you very much for hearing us. Did you have anything to say?
Also, so with the preschool, we would be willing to extend that lease so that they could still providing for the community as well.
Very good. And that's in our proposal too. That's actually really important. I love children.
We both do.
Yes, we both do. So, and we have some safety measures that we had, actually my boys had, when we went and looked at it, my boys said, oh, we have to really think about how the kids are going to get in and out of school. And they came up with, when you go in, there's 2 lanes wide, #1, kid drop off. It's right next to the building, right at the entrance. So they were very thoughtful in considering that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Donice Dukes?
Making Way for Children. Hi, guys. I think I've been up here once before. Donice Dukes, Stevensville, Maryland. This is my niece, Emily, who can attest to the quality of care my children received at Shine Like Stars. I will say that my kids are former students at Shine Like Stars. I feel so compelled to be here today because of the education they received there that I actually braved DC rush hour traffic to get here on time. So what I first wanted to say is that when I was looking around for a quality preschool for my kids, there's a scarcity in this area. It's pretty well documented. Either you get a big box preschool, cookie cutter, and they could give them some cotton balls to paste or something, but no hands-on, besides maybe home care. And Diane was offering a reasonable price, and I'd like that it was in a historic building, and there was a little bit of, preservation of the church being taught, and obviously the manners part, which I need all the help I can get there. And as I thought about this, I thought, if we want to promote real stewardship of this church and to meet its intended purpose, is to allow it to continue in the service that it's doing now as a preschool, but with the enhancements that Diane has proposed. She always has a functioning business there, and there's a win-win, to add in the enhancements of perhaps adding an art center and other things. But, I think, to allow it to continue doing other functions as needed. But if we could agree that there's no greater good than education of young minds, and by allowing Diane to purchase the church, you're fostering preservation values in these children. Lots of people are moving into Kent Island every day. None of them have real ties to the community. And how, once we're long gone, how do you get kids to give a hoot about a church downtown that they drive past every day when they're going to Rustica with their parents. You don't unless they spent time in there and learned to love a building like that. And that building is only going to be loved and maintained by having someone in it daily and teaching these kids to care about these buildings and want to preserve them, again, long after we're gone. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy Higginbotham.
Hello, Kathy Higginbotham, Stevensville, Maryland.
Kathy, could you step up to the mic a little bit?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm here to share my support for the children's nonprofit, not just as a mother of 2 Shining Star students, but also a member of the community and a business owner. I'm not sure how much preschool plays a part in your daily life now, and I surely would not blame you if you felt that preschools are all the same. A place for kids to learn their ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. That is the way that I felt when I started looking 3.5 years ago. With the exception of Kidd Academy, I've personally had a child enrolled or interviewed at every preschool on Kent Island. And I can tell you hands down that Shine Like Stars is more than just a preschool. It's a very special place and 100% needed in our community. Mrs. Ryan and the entire staff of professional teachers are extremely dedicated to their students. They create an environment where the students feel safe and enjoy learning. They're not just learning academics, but also social skills, how to be a good friend, citizen, kindness, gratitude, how to manage feelings. They even do yoga. Can you think of how you would teach 3- and 4-year-olds about weather and make it fun? My daughter Everly's 3-year-old class made wind catchers as part of their lesson on weather. She came home telling me how you can only feel wind, but with the wind catcher you can see it. Learning through play is how they will not just learn a lesson, but hold on to it and be able to apply it later. My son Pearson's pre-K class was learning about the body earlier this year. How do you explain to 5-year-olds what lungs do? The teachers help these kids make vests, and they place plastic baggies on the chest with little straws attached so the kids could see the lungs inflate and deflate with every breath. I mentioned my 4-year-old daughter, Everly. What I didn't mention is that she was diagnosed with a speech delay at 16 months old. At almost 3, speaking at a 2-year-old level, the plan with their IEP was for her to attend the early education program at Kent Island Elementary. That was not the place for her. We were blessed that Everly was able to join the 2-year-old class in January 2018. In January of this year, just 1 year later, Everly is no longer eligible for speech services and is now speaking 3 months above level. That's a 2-year improvement in just 1 year. I give huge credit to Shine Like Stars, for that is where I truly saw Everly's speech blossom. I am a realtor and known as Kent Island Kathy. I love sharing how wonderful Queen Anne's County is. What I love most is that this is a community that values family. There are 45 children that are enrolled at Shine Like Stars right now. That is 45 families that are impacted by the school each year. These families are all residents and taxpayers of Queen Anne's County and include police officers, firefighters, principals, teachers, and staff at our local public schools, work in our local emergency room, our local business owners, and families with generations of history here. The nonprofit's plan that includes historical tours and weddings at the church, public community events, as well as the preschool brings such a great value to Queen Anne's County that I don't think it can truly be measured in dollars. When casting your decision, please choose the children's nonprofit.
Thank you. Jack Broderick.
Thank you. I'm Jack Broderick from Chester, president of the Kent Island Heritage Society. And I emphasize heritage and history. I really strongly recommend you guys focus on the key issue of historic Christ Church. And that's what most of us are talking about tonight, as one of history and heritage and preservation. And believe me, I can attest that historic preservation is tough stuff. It's expensive, as you guys know. It is challenging, and there's always a new challenge around the corner that you got to address, from the last storm or the last aspect of Mother Nature, pressing on the historic structure. I want to emphasize that building, that historic Christ Church, represents a long, long line of Kent Island history, predated Maryland. That, in fact, is William Claiborne's parish that he started almost 400 years ago, 1631. That little parish started down at Kent Point as a tiny little hut. But he brought in a minister and started that parish. It existed there. It went up to Broad Creek in several different forms and iterations, and then it went up to Stevensville, built in its current form in 1880. And I would really admonish you, this is really about our community, and it's about a broader issue than the wonderful work that's carried on by Diane here and what she's doing for those kids, a strong, good faith effort. It's a shame that it's pitted against, little kids against old people worried about old buildings. This is a long-term commitment. I hope you guys consider that. This may carry on a tradition, almost 400-year-old tradition for another, who knows, 50, 100 years or longer. It's an iconic part of Kent Island, an iconic part of Queen Anne's County and the state of Maryland. Please consider that first and foremost. I really believe these businesses that have made very good faith recommendations and good faith proposals and efforts can do quite well, possibly in another location, maybe even in downtown Stevensville. But I would strongly recommend that you leave the future of that historic building to folks that will be able to bring in the right kind of heritage preservation grants, be able to raise local money. Ms. Cook's effort has been to begin to do that. And I strongly recommend you go down that road in the future, maybe in a broader partnership that involves some temporary ability for the kids to stay there a few months while they relocate. But then over the long term, brings this into the community as an appropriately and permanently preserved historic structure. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the last person I had signed up. Would anybody else like to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll close press and public comment and move on.
Okay, Commissioners, we can move on to presentation of documents and signatures of weekly correspondence. If you want to turn to tab 2, we have 4 items from the Department of Public Works. So Mr. Quimby, Mr. Cahoon, and Mr. McGlashan can come on up. I believe the first one is the 2011 Comprehensive Water and Sewer Plan, Water and Sewerage Plan Amendment, 1113.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. As Todd has indicated, there are 4 items on Public Works agenda. If you'll recall, in February, we had a Comprehensive Water and Sewer Plan Amendment hearing, and it's my understanding that there's some interest to renew that motion.
Yeah. Yes.
Get a motion?
Sorry.
Yep.
Making notes.
No, you can't. Oh, you can't. It has to be somebody from the somebody from the no side, and we were the yes side. So,
I move to approve the sewer service map upgrade for the Ponchock property from S3 to S2.
Second.
so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained? So moved. Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you.
We had an abstain?
No, we had a 5-0.
The next item on the agenda, Commissioners, is the Christ Church issue. Dave McGlashan is here to answer any of your questions. As you know, you've had 4 or 5 proposals, and I guess we're here to look for direction.
Okay. Well, first off, what do you think the yearly taxes are going to be on that property? Do you have any idea? I mean, it appraised at, was it 1.2 million?
It was over $1 million, yeah. I don't know what the tax dollar amount would come to, property tax.
10, right?
Probably about 10.
10,000?
Yeah, about 10.
Okay.
Probably about 10 grand.
Okay. Well, does anybody have any questions about some of these proposals? Because what I'd like to do is we've got all the proposals from all the interested parties as of this time. I'd like to set up a subcommittee with 2 commissioners, and what we'll do is we'll bring each one of these organizations in for an interview, discuss it, take some notes and report back to the commission as a whole with some recommendations, so.
I actually do, Jim, have just a couple quick questions for the proposals. The one proposal that came in from the first gal that spoke. Noble, right. In your proposal, does this Shine Like Stars pre-K stay?
Actually, no. We would be very happy to house them, but that
It's okay. That's fine. I just wanted to know. The folks that spoke about the church and the bed and breakfast. Sorry. Diane Kuhn?
Diana.
Okay. Does you mentioned the Shine Like Stars school would stay?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Cook? Does the Shine Like Stars school stay in your proposal?
No. Except if we could extend it for like 3 months, but no.
Okay.
Mr. Dumio, we're not against childcare in any way.
No, I'm not saying you are. I'm just, the proposal was vague, and I'm just trying to figure out, because it wasn't in there. It wasn't in the proposal. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. So, with that being said, I'm going to make a motion that we form a subcommittee to interview everybody, get that type of information, and along with, a better plan of what they intend to do, and go from that point on. Does anybody here would like to sit on that committee?
Yeah, I'll second your motion, and I would like to sit on it.
Second.
Okay. So we have a second on the motion.
I would make that part of the motion, that they'll be the liaisons.
Okay, so did you want to do it too,
Yeah,
Steve?
we liked it.
Okay, so Chris and Steve will handle that, and
Did you want to include some staff members as well on that
Absolutely,
subcommittee?
yeah.
Okay. Planning
I'm
and
sorry,
zoning,
so,
public
yeah.
works, okay.
Dave will be on there, and,
Okay, all right.
we'll add some more, some more staff, and this isn't a race, but, hopefully we can get some of this resolved here within the next, 4 to 6 weeks. Okay, so we have a motion and a second?
Now we have a second.
Okay.
Amended.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So moved. All right, thank you.
Commissioners, all right.
Yep.
Next item is item 3 on page 90, the Baltimore Metropolitan Council agreement for the work program. I get a motion on that?
Move that we approve and sign the Unified Planning Work Program Agreement with the Baltimore Metropolitan Council for FY 2020.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Real quick, Jim.
Steve,
How are, in terms of our bridge traffic, are they a good ally to have right now? And, what you're bouncing off them in terms of what we're going through and all that? Do they seem like that they're on board with, if this NEPA study comes back and says whatever, that they're going to get behind?
Well, Todd Lang, this is something totally different than that. This doesn't have anything to do with that.
It's in the traffic one.
Excuse me?
This is Baltimore Washington Metro Council, not the traffic
Correct.
one.
Right,
Okay.
yeah. So, but as far as, to answer your question, yes, they're on board with it, but they'll be the first to tell you, a project of that magnitude, between $5 and $10 billion, has to be the #1 project for the entire state of Maryland, or it just won't go anywhere. So, they're in that business where they understand that, and that's what they've been preaching to us.
Okay.
So getting back to this, we have a motion that we approve and sign the Unified Planning Work Program Agreement with the Baltimore Metropolitan Council for FY 2020. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Okay, Commissioners, thank you. The next item is item 4 on page 103, and this is involving the water and sewer allocation policy, enforcement of time limits, and recapture provisions.
I have to convene as a sanitary commission.
Okay, so
Motion to convene.
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, so what do we have here? We have,
Well, if you recall, in February, we had 6 projects that had exceeded their allocation deadlines. In other words, they were granted allocation from 9 to a few years ago, and hadn't met the 3 years to begin construction.
the 2 years, so just for the public at home, when these projects are approved and they give you their deposit for their allocation,
Right.
which presently is refundable, correct?
Correct. At 10% is refundable.
the 10% deposit is refundable, but they have 2 years to move forward until they get to, this is basically a decision time. Do you extend the 2 years? After 2 years, you extend it, they come in on a per basis? What happens after 2 years?
Actually, this is the first time we've been down this road.
Okay.
So,
I mean, because I'm looking here and you got, shopping center from 2008, you got the Enclave from 2010, so it's been a lot more than 2 years.
right.
And we've never, we've had that on the books, but we've just never enforced it, is that what you?
For a couple of reasons, one of which was until Southern Kent Island and Four Seasons moved forward, quite frankly, the sanitary district couldn't really afford to refund that $500,000. And on the other hand, we had so much capacity, it really wasn't an issue. Both of those situations have reversed.
Right.
Capacity is drying up more or less, and because of Four Seasons and Southern Kent Island, we are in a better financial state than we were.
Okay, all right.
In terms of the point at which the execution becomes the 2 years, what is required to trigger the execution of the building? Is it permitting? Is it planning? I mean, where does that line get drawn?
Unconditional final approval, which means they've executed the public works agreement, paid their allocation fees, put up their sureties, put up their fees, and the planning commission has signed off on the plan.
So they're sitting right at permitting stage,
Yes,
basically?
they just pull a building permit.
So none of these projects here that you brought forward are at that stage?
Not at the point.
Right.
Okay.
So what the motion you made in February was to send them a letter saying they had, whatever it was, either pay the allocation fees up in full, or that we were considering rescinding the allocation. One of the RVG requested their deposit back, which was fine. A second one, which was listed as Penguin Ventures, although it's been sold since then, they paid their allocation in full in accordance with your motion. The other four asked for varying considerations, and basically in the form of extensions, 12-month, 18-month. So what staff did was draft some motions for your consideration, which would make, just for these four projects initially, we would make the 10% that they had already deposited non-refundable. It would request a second 10% non-refundable. Then we would also recommend that we change the allocation policy going forward for any future allocation requests that the 10% be non-refundable. And the third motion was that you would hold any pending allocation requests until we decided what you want to do on the allocation policy.
Mm-hmm.
So
these are what you're looking at on page 2 are the different motions with this. So, what I'd like to see, right now, I think that this is might be a little bit much for all of us to digest at one time. So, I'd like to hold this over till our next meeting and have everybody, take a look at this, and dive into it. For instance, I've had a couple calls today from a couple different developers / attorneys, and they just would like, opportunity to come in and discuss this, and I think that's more than, I don't see a problem with that. We've had this for so long, and we're trying to rectify this now, which is, I'm glad we're doing it. So, we're going to table this.
Can we set up the time slot in the next meeting for maybe an informal hearing to hear from some of these concerns that you're getting?
Yeah, we can.
Commissioners, we did get one letter from one of the applicants from Foster Law with a proposal, which I think we're more or less comfortable with. It's very similar to what we proposed in motion number 1 for consideration today, so we can certainly approach the other ones and
exactly, that's what I mean.
So let's do that with them ahead of time if you want.
And let's
come back with
let's get I think something where we can present that, discuss it, and move forward from there.
But we probably do want to stem any future allocation at this point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you could still make it. You could still consider
I'd
motions 2 and 3.
I think, just to
2 and 3.
Yeah.
But good.
Well, you want to go to motion 2, Jack?
Yeah.
And 3. Okay.
Yeah, I move to consider revising the current allocation policy to make all future deposits on allocation commitments non-refundable. In order to do so, a hearing will be held on July 23rd to amend the comprehensive water and sewage plan, of which the allocation policy is a component.
And I'll second that.
And just for the public's knowledge, the non-refundability used to be the way it was.
It used to be
been
that way.
changed to being refundable.
That's
So
correct.
It used to be non-refundable.
And I'd like to see, for instance, the surrounding counties and the rest of the state, how they handle that, if that's the norm or if that's, out of the norm. Any other discussion on this motion? Okay, so we are going to vote on revising the current allocation policy to make all future deposits on allocation commitments non-refundable. In order to do so, a hearing will be held on July 23rd to amend the comprehensive water and sewage plan, of which the allocation policy is a component. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved, 5-0.
Then I would like to move to table any pending allocation requests until after a decision is made on the proposed allocation policy revision.
Second it.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion there? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved, 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our business.
There you go.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioners, we can continue with our action items. If you want to turn to tab 3, page 1, item 5, we have the Correctional Officers Retirement System Agreement.
Anybody want to make that motion?
Yeah, sure. I move that transfer and participation agreement be approved and signed as presented.
I'll second that. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
None from me. I think this is something we need to do
Right.
in light of our situation in detention, and that hopefully we are moving toward this rebuild, which we're also going to do, which is sorely needed. And this is part of a revamping of something which is in need of repair. So,
And this, in a nutshell, is just we're moving their retirement plan in with CORS.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a transfer agreement to move it over to the courts. It's just a kind of a formality.
This is for our correctional officers
For the
only.
correctional officers, detention center employees.
Detention center
That's correct.
employees, right. Okay, so the transfer and participation agreement be approved and signed as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained? So moved, 5-0.
Okay, item 6 on page 32 is some revisions to some standard draft operating policies and procedures. They include the Employee Assistance Program, the Commercial Driver's License Reimbursements, the ID badge policy, telephone usage, and meal and work breaks policy for your consideration. And Beverly Churchill was here. If you have any questions about those, can I get a motion on those?
I move that the 5 update draft standard operating policy, including employee assistance program, commercial driver's license, reimbursements, identification badge policy, telephone usage, and meal and work breaks, be adopted as presented, effective in 7 business days.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I guess just a couple of the items, I'm just not familiar with what the changes are, because it's basically just kind of broad, so if Beverly could come up.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I understand what they are, just curious as to what the actual change is. The one with the telephone usage
Some of them,
policy.
why?
Most of them are just for housekeeping.
I'm just curious, the difference obviously between cellular and,
So the telephone policy in particular was, we just needed to upgrade it because the technology is changing so fast that some of the terminology does not meet what's happening in today's telephone world.
Gotcha.
So we sent it over to Megan in IT and asked her to just really give it a facelift.
okay.
And so she did, and so we, sent it around to the other department directors.
There's
and-
more to verbiage in it, the way it's written.
Yeah, it's really not a substantial change. It's just, some things we are outdated now. So same thing like the employee assistance policy, we had our company that does our EAP take a look at it, and they're sort of more whole encompassing to the whole household. And so they just sort of made a lot of changes to incorporate, to make sure we're up to speed on what the policy incorporates versus what the benefit incorporated. So that's what a lot of these are. It's nothing, no material changes that affect really anything in particular. So that's
Perfect.
just some housekeeping things. We sort of, instead of bringing them to you one at a time, I've
No,
sort of been
it's better to
holding
break
on
down.
to them and brought
Right.
them as a group. So there's nothing really material. I don't know if that helps. I can go through them one by one if you want me
Nope,
to.
that's good. The
Okay.
telephone was what I was curious about. I know
Yeah.
we don't use,
Yeah,
everybody's
it
using a cell
changes by
phone now.
warp speed. It'll
Yeah.
probably no good by the time I get back
Okay.
downstairs.
So what is the motive behind the meal and work breaks policy?
So we have a wellness committee, and so the wellness committee was just wanting to sort of encourage when the people that take their entitled break, to instead of, just maybe taking a smoke break. I don't know if I want to say that on camera.
Do some push-ups.
Yeah, like maybe walk.
run in place
take-
while you're eating your hamburger. That's all.
Take a walk around the building, or, stand and stretch, or do something a little more productive towards wellness and health.
Very good. I like them all.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve the 5 update draft standard operating policy, including employee assistance program, commercial driver's license reimbursements, identification badge policy, telephone usage, and meal and work breaks, be adopted as presented, effective in 7 business days. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Thank you, Beverly.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Churchill. All right, Commissioners, item 7 on page 50 is a vehicle replacement request from the maintenance, or from the Parks and Public Landings Division. Can I get a motion on that?
Yes, they do.
Someone tell them it's less painful, it just comes with 5 at one time.
This is, this one here.
Okay.
I move to approve the purchase of a 29, let me get my specs out here. I want to get this date wrong.
Put your eyes on. There you go.
Not a 1989 Ford utility truck. Okay, I move to approve purchase 2019 Ford 350 utility truck in the amount of $45,395 by piggybacking on the State of Maryland Department of General Services purchase contract with Apple Ford of Columbia, Maryland.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Steve,
How many more trucks this year?
Phil just brings up a good point. Come on up here.
Well, actually, this is a replacement.
We know that, so we're kind of curious. It's
Are you opening
it's
up
like
a dealership on the side, or?
3 meetings in a row, and you keep
Are
coming
you
for one
getting
truck at a
kickbacks?
time. We can't just lump them all together and come in at one time?
Well, they come, the last 3 times or 2 times were just because we had a series of trucks that were deadlined back to back to back. These next purchases were because of capital.
Okay.
But is this a replacement or new?
This one for James is a replacement one.
So it says in the description for snow removal that, so you guys don't share snow removal trucks?
What's that?
No.
If need be, yeah, but I mean, they have their duties, and the Roads Division, Public Works has their,
Okay, so they have their
separate
areas
duties.
that they're responsible
Oh, yeah.
for doing the snow
This
removal.
one's dedicated to the
It's
It's
public.
not a
landing areas.
countywide thing.
No, it's, we have our responsibility, we've got the schools and things like that we have to take care of, and depending on the amount of snow, you're going to need as many
Yeah.
vehicles as possible.
Yeah, the departments help each other, but they all have their specific assigned routes and duties and
Okay.
areas of responsibility.
And I was just trying to understand, it just seems to me that with snow removal, and the county's doing it because it's county property, they're just county trucks that are doing it. So poor James is, I guess, now that finally he's got his own snow removal truck, he doesn't have to wait on other county departments so good for you.
Right. They do all the school facilities.
School lots are done, yeah.
So what are we kicking to the curb on this one, Steve? What year's the old?
It's 2012, and we're going to repurpose it to our mechanic so he can go ahead and make road calls. Right now, he doesn't have the ability to
very
take
good.
tools and go outside. We have to trailer whatever is broken and bring it back to the shop. By utilizing, able to go out in the field, hopefully we can.
To put like a unibody on it or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay,
So don't go anywhere.
So we have a motion to approve the purchase of a 2019 Ford F-350 utility truck in the amount of $45,395 by piggybacking on the State of Maryland Department of General Services purchase contract with Apple Ford of Columbia, Maryland. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved. 5-0. Okay. Moving on to the next one.
Item 8 on page 53, we have Parks and Rec vehicle purchase, FY20. On that?
Yes.
I move to authorize Department of Parks and Recreation to purchase a 2019 Ford 350. Didn't I just read this?
No, this one's less expensive. There's no
I
snowplow.
know
No snowplow.
I know. 350 from Apple Ford, Columbia, Maryland, for $30,965 using Maryland Department of General Services contract. Funding to come from the Department of Parks and Recreation 2020 capital equipment budget.
Second. I doubt there's any more discussion, right?
Well, that's not true.
What are we replacing with this one?
This is a brand-new purchase.
Okay.
And it's going to be utilized in order to get the new staff that we have been allocated for FY20 around.
Right. So that'll be the whole new crew.
We joke and we make fun, but in reality, you have a fleet of vehicles that you've been working and driving And they'd probably been actually operating more than they'd been sit idle for years and years and years and years and years. And so we joke and kid, but I don't doubt for 1 minute that these vehicles aren't needed, for sure. But thank you for letting us
Give you a hard time.
give you a hard time.
As long as we get a yes, it's okay.
'Cause I don't care what you say, just say yes.
All right, so we're here to authorize the Department of Parks and Recreation to purchase a 2019 Ford F-350 pickup from Apple Ford, Columbia, Maryland for $30,965 using the Maryland Department of General Services contract, funding to come from the Department of Parks and Recreation's FY 2020 capital equipment budget. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved.
And we won't see you now till August at least, right?
Get a pencil.
That's right. See you in 2 weeks.
All next week. All right, thank you, Director Chamley, yes, yes. Okay, Commissioners, moving on to item number 9 on page 56. We have a major category transfer of funds for the Board of Education between transportation and fixed charges for $320,000. Can I get a motion for that, please?
I move to approve the BOE request to transfer $320,000 between major state categories to increase transportation from fixed charges.
I'll second that. And
Dr.
Dr.
Kane is
Kane, if
here.
you don't mind coming up, you can explain to the public.
If you need some trucks, Commissioner Dumanel's giving them out.
Yeah, you need an extra truck?
I'm gonna get a side job at
Well,
Apple
since
Ford.
you're handing them out.
Free trucks, free trucks.
Good evening, gentlemen, Ms. Moran and Commissioners. For the record, Andrea Kane, Superintendent of Schools, Queen Anne's County. I have with me John Pfister, our CFO, and of course, you know, also Sid Pender, our Chief Operating Officer.
Okay.
And Mr. Pfister and Mr. Pender, if you have any questions, are going to talk to you about the transfer.
So fire away. Tell us why we're transferring, first how you picked the categories, what the dollar amounts for, and
So the category that we're experiencing excess costs is in transportation, mainly due to all of our special ed transportation as noted in the document, including extended school year, driver substitutes, costs for buses, field trips with having to send a secondary bus with a lift to accommodate our special needs children. Throughout the year, we've experienced some savings on the healthcare and retiree insurance, as I believe the county has as well, being part of the SMEC Health Alliance. So we were able to utilize some of those savings and offset those with the over expenditures within the transportation category.
okay, all right, excellent. So we've got that one, and I'm going to digress here a little bit. The one program we did add at the end?
Yes, Virtual Academy.
And how
Thank you very
many
much.
people did you get signed up?
So 25 expressed interest, and so we're working through the vendors right now to get set up, and then we'll be in contact with those parents. We'll have an interest meeting, community meeting, and get them signed up right away.
Excellent, excellent. And how's your bus talks going?
Very well.
Good, very good.
Very well.
Excellent. So, good news.
We're hiring right now, actually, for the Virtual Academy coordinator, so ready to go.
Nice. Excellent, very good.
So for the virtual academy, how many hours a day would the students have that? Is it like an on-demand, or is there a specific time that they would?
No, it is not a specific time during the day, but it's a full course load. So if they start at 8 a.m. and they finish at 3 p.m., or if they start at 9 and they finish at 4. So there are assignments that students are doing, and there's face-to-face time with an actual teacher, office hours if they don't need to have the teacher right then and there with an assignment. Someone always has to be home, of course, but it's a full school, so it's an academy.
Is the face-to-face time, is that in person, or is that over like a video chat?
Virtual.
Virtual.
Online.
Cool.
Thank you.
So we are the beta, right? I
We
checked
are the
around,
beta.
nobody else is doing
We
this,
are the
so-
beta. There are some programs in Frederick County that we went to visit, but theirs is more of a blended model for the most part. So this will be the first in Maryland for full academy.
Right.
Yep, thank you.
And fields are being torn up as we speak?
Yes,
and-
sir. We just had a meeting today, and progress is going along very quickly. Very impressed.
This is a smile.
Me too.
Very good. Well, I'm glad to see that's working well too, so, excellent. Okay, well, we have a motion to approve the Board of Education request to transfer $320,000 between major state categories to increase transportation from fixed charges. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioners, just hang on a minute. We had two desk items for the Board of Education.
Excuse me.
We had two desk items. Cover those two while you're here?
Two items.
If you want to get to your desk item number 14, certification statement for teacher salary incentive grant program. And that just came in,
Section 13,
actually, I believe on Sunday, so sorry for
14
the
and 15?
timing on that, but Board of Ed sent that in. That's just for signature by the commission president for the additional state monies from the Kerwin Commission.
Motion to have Commissioner Moran sign Commission President Moran sign the teacher grant statement.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All righty, takes care of that one.
And then desk item 15 is the certification of the Board of Education annual budget.
Yes, sir.
Get a motion for that,
Motion to
please.
have Commissioner Moran sign the Board of Education's annual budget to certify it.
Second?
We have a motion and we have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
There we go.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Thanks very much. All right, Commissioners, a couple more items here. Back in tab 3, item number 10 on page 57 is the annual MACO dues invoice for 2020.
Move to pay the $15,113 FY 2020 MACO dues and assessments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Okay.
For Mako?
Yeah.
No.
No?
No.
Hey, Commissioners, item number 11 on page 62 is the Community Partnerships for Children and Families nomination and appointments. Action item for your consideration. Can I get a motion on that?
That looks like yours, Stevie. That's a long one. I'll get it. I move to appoint Angie Marsh, Colleen Thomas, and Anna Fox to the Board of the Queen Anne's County Community Partnerships for Children and Families effective July 1st, 2019, to serve a 3-year term ending June 30th, 2022, and to appoint Laura Searcy, Jason Mullen, and Maynard Nash to the Board of Queen Anne's County Community Partnerships for Children and Families effective July 1st, 2019, to serve for as long as they hold their current professional positions, and to reappoint Carla Altamirano and Michelle Johnson to a second 3-year term ending June 30th, 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
You gonna read that again?
We're
No,
not
great
definitely,
job on
we're
that.
definitely not
Carlos,
repeating
I
that
think you
one.
nailed it.
So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved, 5-0.
That was a nice.
Okay, Commissioners, item 12 on page 64 is Budget Amendment CC 28 for the Sheriff's Department. And this is for his Port Authority security grant.
Okay. I move to approve Budget Amendment CC 28.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Okay, and our last item is desk item number 13, and this is our draft citizen tax bill letter, and this is the cover letter that goes out with our property tax bills next month. Can I get a motion on that?
Of course, I put it.
Move to approve the tax bill letter to accompany fiscal year 2020 tax bills.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I didn't think we'd ever get here
No?
to this point where we were signing the letter.
No, come on.
Hey,
Mr. Wilson, did you check over the letter?
I have been,
Give it your blessing?
it's a rewrite of one we did a year
Okay,
ago.
then.
Yeah.
There it is.
Got some new numbers, though.
That's right, got some new numbers.
Different numbers.
Okay. Well, we have a motion and a second to approve the letter that goes out with the tax bill. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
It's actually two new names on that letter.
That's right.
Hey, Chris?
2 new names.
Okay, Commissioners, next we have our legislative session. We have 3 public hearings, and I'd ask County Attorney Patrick Thompson to join us, please. First, we have County Ordinance 1908, repeal of Section 415, ownership disclosure of the Code of Public Local Laws of Queen Anne's County.
You ready?
Yes, sir.
On May the 21st, 2019, Commissioner Moran introduced County Ordinance Number 1908, a bill entitled An Act Concerning the Repeal of Section 4-15, entitled Ownership Disclosure of the Code of Public Local Laws of Queen Anne's County. for the purpose of repealing Section 415 of Chapter 4 of the Code of Public Local Laws, requiring disclosure of ownership interest in entities participating in actions before the Queen Anne's County Board of Appeals by repealing Section 415 of Chapter 4 of the Public Local Laws. This hearing is being held Tuesday, June 25th, 2019 at 5:45 p.m. County Commissioner Meeting Room, Liberty Building, 107 North Liberty Street, Centerville, Maryland. Copies of the proposed ordinance have been available at the County Commissioner's office during normal business hours and online at the county website. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. Written testimony of any length may be submitted on or before the hearing date to the County Commissioners. All hearing sites are accessible to individuals with disabilities. Sign language interpreters and assistive listening systems are available. Part of the record of the proceeding will be a certificate of publication indicating the notice of tonight's hearing was published in the Queen Anne Record Observer and the Kent Island Bay Times, newspapers of general circulation in Queen Anne's County. The person I've got signed up is Jay Falstad.
Thank you, Commissioners. Jay Falstad from Queen Anne's Conservation Association. And I guess before I speak, I'll just hand this to Margie so that she can hand it out to you all. I confess, I don't recall exactly when this bill was originally brought up, but I want to say it was back in 2016. And in full disclosure, Commissioner Moran and I have talked about this. We have a civil disagreement on repealing this. But upon learning about the bill, what I did was, as you know, we have a couple of attorneys that we deal with from time to time. And so I asked her to go back and look at 415 and just ask or have her review what repealing that might be and what its impacts might be. And so here's what I found out. At the federal level, rules like this are designed to reach a majority of circumstances that are likely to call for a disqualification on the basis of financial information that a judge may or may not know or recollect when things come before a board of appeals or any other public body in the county. And so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this because I think the document speaks for itself, but I guess in conclusion what I would say is transparency is a good thing, and anytime you have business before the county, we ought to disclose. And the way things are now are meant to protect the county just as much as they're to protect everybody else. And so the summary, I think, lays it out pretty clearly here. But I have to say, instead of being repealed, it seems to me that this ought to be strengthened to include the Planning Commission and any other bodies where disclosures like this are necessary. So I hope that you'll take that into consideration before you vote on it. Thank you very much.
Would anybody else like to speak? Seeing none, we're going to close press and public comment. Can we bring Mike Wostonsky up here to ask some questions about this? Or is it? Mike, you mind coming up for a minute? Was there an issue at one of the Board of Appeals meetings about disclosures? I don't know if it was one of the solar or one.
It was in, I think it was April, we had a public hearing on a utility solar project, and there are multiple owners, partial owners in an LLC on the utility solar. And with this disclosure requirement, we went to the hearing. They did not file the proper disclosure forms. There were 100 or so people in the audience who wanted to speak at this public hearing, and because this disclosure document was not executed, we had to continue the hearing, which really created an unusual situation for us, because when you bring people out to a meeting and they all expect and juggle their schedules to be at a place and time to speak, obviously there was a lot of frustration in the audience because we had to continue the hearing due to the fact that this disclosure statement was not filed properly. So it's simple when you may have a handful of owners in an LLC, but when you have hundreds of owners in an LLC, it's impossible to get them to sign, and our attorney worked with their attorney to come up with provisions to kind of dance around that requirement, but on large projects like that, it becomes cumbersome.
And, I mean, I guess to that Board of Appeals, does it matter who owns the project? I mean, are they, their job is to look at what the project is, correct? I mean, it's not who owns it and where that comes from,
It's judged on its merits.
right, I mean,
Correct.
I guess that.
Correct. In the 4 years since I've been here and this issue has come up before the Board of Appeals, that has never been a question by the members. It really doesn't matter. It's based on the facts of the case that they're presenting at that time before the Board of Appeals.
And I don't see Stan here, but I thought Stan researched it, and there's
We
nowhere
did.
else in this.
We were asked to research the issue to determine whether or not there were any other counties on the Eastern Shore that had such a disclosure requirement, or in the state of Maryland, and in our research, we could not find another county that had such a requirement.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and you know, I guess to that, you know, if you're going to do it to the Board of Appeals, why wouldn't you do it for every project that came through the county? And you know, and I just, you know, that's why I think that it's, you know, again, the project's by merit, not by who owns it. You know, unless you're, you know, I don't know what else you could be looking for. So that's why I introduced it, and that's why I support, you know, the repeal.
Let me ask you, if there's, if the LLC, if one of the members of that LLC is another LLC, do they have to disclose the membership interest in that secondary LLC?
And that's the issue.
And so it could go on and on and on and on.
That's the issue we were having with utility solar, yes, sir. That's exactly what happened.
Right, so I mean, this comes up sometimes in the context of in litigation, if you are trying to remove a case from state court to federal court. And if there's an LLC that's a party, you have to say who the members are, and to just see if you actually have jurisdiction, the court of jurisdiction over it. And if it's an LLC, and then there's one of the members is an LLC, and then another member of that is an LLC, I mean, you could go 20, 30 deep sometimes. Sometimes the people who own the LLC, the main controlling partners, they can't even find that information.
Correct.
So it does get very
And that is
cumbersome.
exactly what happened on that utility solar project. There were LLCs that owned.
Because you
parts
could
of
have
other-
somebody who
Right.
buys in some partnership interest just as an investment. They're not really running the LLC or anything like that.
Right.
And so the process would have to be put into continuance until that is met, correct?
I cannot, because I'm not an attorney, pardon me, I cannot fully explain to you how we were able to resolve that issue on that one application. All I know was there was an agreement reached between the Board of Appeals attorney and the applicant's attorney, and we're able to file the paperwork that was acceptable to the board's attorney, and that's why we were able to have the hearing the next month. It got incredibly complicated because of that issue.
Can you share that decision and how that was made with us between now and
Sure.
when we go to vote,
Sure.
just so we know the
Yep.
background on how that was resolved?
Yep. Be happy to.
Any other questions for Mike? Thank you very much.
Great,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
We'll close this one, right?
Close this one, on to the next.
Well, we, for the public's knowledge, we hold, you know, after the hearings, we hold everything for 2 weeks, and we'll vote in 2 weeks on that ordinance.
On May the 21st, 2019, Commissioner Corchirino introduced County Ordinance 1909, a bill entitled An Act Concerning Amendments to Chapter 13 of the Code of Public Local Laws of Queen Anne's County regarding the use of school bus monitoring cameras by school and law enforcement officials for the purpose of providing for photographic enforcement and administrative adjudication of school bus stop arm violations and imposition of civil fines for those violations consistent with Maryland state law, including but not limited to Section 21706.1 of the Transportation Article in Maryland Courts and Judicial Proceedings, Code 7302 and 10311, by adopting a new Article 4, Section 13-14 as an addition to the public local laws of Queen Anne's County. This public hearing is being held on Tuesday, June 25th, 2019 at 5:50 p.m. in the County Commissioner's Office, County Commissioner Meeting Room, Liberty Building, 107 North Liberty Street, Centerville, Maryland. Copies of the ordinance have been available at the County Commissioner's Office prior to the hearing during normal business hours and online on the county website. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes each. Written testimony of any length can be submitted on or before the hearing date to the county commissioners. All hearing sites are accessible to individuals with disabilities. Sign language interpreters and assistive listening systems are available. Part of the record of the proceeding will be a certificate of publication indicating that notice of tonight's hearing was published in the Record Observer and Kent Island Bay Times, newspapers of general circulation in Queen Anne's County. Oh, I'm sorry. Jay Falstad.
Commissioners, Jay Falstad. I'm not speaking on behalf of Queen Anne's Conservation Association on this one, but simply as a parent. So last October, I take my own kid to the bus stop. We have a long driveway, and so she was waiting, and bus came up, flashing red lights, car went right through. I talked to a couple of bus drivers after that, and I said, you know, I've seen this now, and it is a big problem. I didn't realize how big until a couple days after I witnessed that incident. I brought an article here for you. In Indiana, a car plowed through a bus stop, flashing red lights, killed a sister and her 2 twin brothers, wiped out an entire family. After talking to a few other bus drivers around the county, I found out that this is a common occurrence. I reached out to Mr. Pinder and the Board of Education and said, you know, is the county doing anything about this? And he indicated at the time that the wheels were in motion to try and get cameras on buses, but bureaucracy, it's slow. Lance Richardson and Sheriff Hoffman are also on this, but I am in strong support of this. I hope every parent in this room is in strong support of it, because I am telling you, it's just a matter of time before some kid gets hurt, and then we're all going to be, you know, trying to work to get this corrected. And so I hope we can do this now, and I hope there's no resistance to it. But I'd like to enter this in for the record, and thanks for your consideration on this one.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any comment with respect to County Ordinance 1909?
Yeah, come up to the. That's okay, you can come up. Yeah, that's fine. Just tell us your name and where you live, and tell us whatever you want.
I'm Wendy Hampton. I live here in Centerville. I'm also a school bus driver. That's why I want to touch that base on this. This is something that happens every day, over and over and over again. Some of the bus drivers don't even call it in anymore because they say nothing's being done. I'm a bus driver here in Centerville. Very seldom does a day go by that they don't run my lights. A lot of times they're running my lights because they're texting. They go by me on Liberty Street, I got my lights on. They go by me just like this. I lay on the horn, and they don't even see me. They don't even look up. One day, one just stuck her hand up, waved to me as she went by as I'm letting kids off. I'm scared to death. I've talked to everybody that I know to talk to. I don't know what to do about it. I've started taking it in my own hands, and I know that I'm not supposed to because they tell me I'm not. When I pull up to drop kids off now, I pull across the road. I'm not supposed to. But my kids are more important to me than anything else. And I've said, something's going to happen to a child before something's done if something isn't done soon. It's scary. Like I said, it's daily. That radio, if you could hear our radio morning and afternoon, especially afternoon, it goes on and on and on. I'd say we have at least 3 calls every afternoon. That's 3 calls too many. I drive here in Centerville and also drive on Kent Island. I also have them down to Kent Island, but mainly here in Centerville. Water Street's terrible. Hate to say it, but I even had a police officer run my lights. I've had a town employee run my lights. People just, it's so much going on for one thing, and people just aren't paying attention. I work for Lawrence Chenault, L&S Bus Service. I've talked to him about it. I said, if the buses had 2 stop signs instead of 1, maybe that would help. But we need cameras on them buses to get, but we need it on both sides, because you don't know how many people pass us on the shoulder. Where the door is, they pass us. I tell my kids as they get ready to get off, do not move until I tell you to stop, to go. I put my lights on, I sit there and wait. Will not let them off until I see the car stopping. But that's not any guarantee that they're gonna stay there. I've had them stop and the kids get off and then they take off as the kids are going. It's scary. Please, please, please do something about it. I beg everybody before a child is killed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your service. Okay.
Any other public comment with respect to County Ordinance 1909?
I will close public comment for that. What is the fine? I mean, this is
Just what we were discussing, but we can make a hell of a fine on this one.
I
We
think,
have it listed,
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
We can check on that and
yeah,
let
but
you
you'd
know
like to
what
find
the
out what
fine
that
is.
is, because I agree. I think that
Yeah.
the cameras can. Yeah. What's that?
make it a fine that's gonna hurt.
Absolutely, yeah, because that's only, because if the fine doesn't hurt, they'll just keep doing it,
Right.
so. Okay. Moving on to the next one, Pat.
Next. On May the 28th, 2019, Commissioner Jack Wilson introduced County Ordinance 1910, a bill entitled an act concerning the repeal and readoption with amendments of the public local laws of Queen Anne's County, Chapter 14, Chesapeake Bay Critical Area Act, official Chesapeake Bay Critical Area Overlay Map number 56, for the purpose of amending part of parcel 221, lot 7, located on the official Chesapeake Bay Critical Area over map 56, to redesignate 2.122 acres from limited development area to intensely developed area by repealing and readopting the official Queen Anne's County zoning map. This hearing is being held Tuesday, June 25th, 2019 at 5:55 p.m. in the County Commissioner's Meeting Room, Liberty Building, 107 North Liberty Street, Centerville, Maryland. Copies of the proposed ordinance have been available to the County Commissioner's Office, 107 North Liberty Street, Centerville, or Department of Planning and Zoning, 110 Vincent Street, Centerville, Maryland, and also online at the county website. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. Written testimony of any length can be submitted on before the hearing to the county commissioners. All hearing sites are accessible to individuals with disabilities. Sign language interpreters and assistive listening systems are available. Part of the record of the proceeding will be the petition and accompanying documents submitted by Sonny Schultz Boulevard LLC, the recommendations of the Queen Anne's County Planning Commission, the recommendations and conditions of the State of Maryland Critical Area Commission, as well as a certificate of publication indicating the notice of tonight's hearing was published in the Record Observer and the Kent Island Bay Times, newspapers of general circulation in Queen Anne's County. I think Ms. Linder is representing, from Joe Stevens' office is representing the petitioner.
Good evening. Genevieve Linder on behalf of Sonny Schultz Boulevard LLC, who is the applicant. To my left, I have Mr. Barry Griffith, who is a project engineer. Before I have Mr. Griffith explain this project, I just want to note that the Critical Area Commission unanimously approved this as a refinement back in May. And Mr. Griffith will describe our growth area allocation.
Good evening, Commissioners. Barry Griffith, Land Engineering. You all looked at this back in February and gave it a conceptual approval, so I'm not going to get into a lot of detail on exactly what's the specifics of the site plan that the Planning Commission still has, or the Planning Department still has yet to approve. It's been a long process going through growth allocation. This is Lot 7 in the county's Mattapique Business Park. It's zoned suburban industrial. It's within the growth area, designated as a priority funding area and an enterprise zone. It's a 5-acre site. Over half of the site is in the critical area associated with Warehouse Creek. And that portion of the site that's in the critical area has an LDA designation, which has a limit on impervious area of 15%. It's not designed as the appropriate designation for a county business park. The critical area portion on the western side of the business park associated with the Chesapeake Bay is already designated as IDA. So for whatever reason, this particular lot that was sold by the county and ultimately our client is trying to develop now doesn't have the right critical area designation. So we need 2.122 acres of growth allocation from LDA to IDA so the site can reasonably be developed for industrial purposes to accommodate a 45,000 square foot industrial warehouse office building with the minimum amount required parking and the minimum amount of area for required stormwater management. That leaves about 0.65 acres of the critical area which we're not designating for growth allocation. We were asked by Planning and Zoning as well as the Planning Commission to try to scale back a little on clearing and development in the critical area. We did the best we could. We did cut the number back some. The Critical Area Commission looked at this in May and gave it unanimous approval with conditions. We're asking you to approve the growth allocation.
And as part of the hearing back in February, there was an exhibit that is part of the record that's labeled Growth Allocation Standard as applied. I ask that you incorporate this in your findings of fact for your decision and ask that you approve this ordinance.
That'll be part of the record. Thank you. Is there any other public comment in favor of the proposed redesignation? Any other testimony in opposition or any public comment in opposition?
Seeing none, we'll close the public comment portion.
Commissioner, this one you have to make findings of fact, which I'll draft up for you for.
You'll have those for us for the next meeting.
For the next meeting.
Right. Very good.
Thanks, Patrick.
Is that it?
That's it.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
We have one ordinance that can be introduced this evening, ordinance 1912, county transfer tax.
Yeah, I'll introduce it.
Thank you. All right, Commissioners, that brings us to presentations. If you want to turn to tab number 6, we have from the Maryland Shore Health, Regional Health, Ken Cozell and Patty Willis. Come on up, folks. Shore Health update.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you? Good to see you, Phil. Good to see you too.
How you doing?
How are you? Good to see you. Good. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you this evening. We understand you've got a full schedule and another presentation behind you behind us that I'm anxious to hear about. So we'll be brief, but certainly we'll answer any questions you have about what's going on at Shore Regional. I'll start off and then transition to Patty if that's okay, because she's much more articulate than I am, and we'll leave it at that. As you know, our emergency center here in Queenstown is just a phenomenal medical health care facility. It provides great care to our community, especially during these times of the year where summer traffic and bridge traffic is often compromising flow of patients and transfer of patients to a hospital system. So it's really doing its job very, very well. And I'm pleased to report that through the first five or 6 months of this calendar year, we're already 500 plus visits greater than we were this time last year. So we're in excess of 15,000 visits on a yearly basis in the emergency center. But at this point, we're exceeding those numbers in this calendar year. So it's really providing a great service. And as we head into our busy season of the year, we look to Mary Alice and the very competent and qualified team to take care of our community here through the emergency center. But as you know, not all patients need emergency care. In addition to primary care, there's often urgent care possibilities that could exist for our community. And we at Shore are looking at that possibility to provide urgent care services here in Queen Anne's County. As you know, we have a partnership with Choice One. We have 2 centers already in operation for urgent care, one in Denton and one in Easton. And we're working with Choice One to look at a couple of different location options in Queen Anne's County to develop an urgent care site here. We're doing the business plan proposals as we speak, and based on those business plans, we'll see if it makes sense for us to do that. But we know that primary care and urgent care or emergent care aren't the only solutions for continuum of care. So we're going to take a very aggressive look at that.
Where would you think to locate that?
At the risk of letting our competition know, I refuse to answer that question. I'm just kidding. No, we're looking at Kent Island and Centerville.
Yeah.
And really, if you've got thoughts after this, we'd be happy to take your thoughts as well.
What size facilities are you looking at or considering for that?
The urgent care facility is typically around 10,000 square feet. It's just a large waiting room area with multiple exam rooms in it, and then a discharge location. So about 10,000 square feet, looking at a commercial site that's visible to the community and easy access to get there.
Very good.
So in addition to the fantastic emergency center and the need for the need for urgent care, we're also looking at observation beds. We talked about this, I think, last time, and really we're at a point now where we've met several times as a hospital system. We've discussed what the needs may be to start a pilot study for this, and we're about ready to launch that pilot study. I'd say within the next month or so, we'd begin to see observation patients in our Queenstown Emergency Center. Not all observation patients. We're going to be pretty restrictive about who we see because we don't necessarily want to really compromise the care of a patient getting seen in our emergency center. We want them to get appropriate care, but we believe that there's a population of patients who could be safely observed in our emergency center for up to 23 hours. Most of our patients are discharged within 6 to 8 hours in the center. We believe if we have the appropriate provisions, we can establish an observation unit there that would see patients up to 23 hours. So we're going to pilot that. We're putting together the final plans. And again, Dr. Walt Ather, our emergency department physician, and Mary Alice will be instrumental in launching that pilot study. And we'll see how it works. You know, our typical numbers are showing at this point maybe 3 to 5 observation patients a week in the center. So that's why it's going to take a little longer for the study to happen. But at the end of the day, our intent would be to keep patients in Queen Anne's County, avoid that transfer to Easton, discharge from Easton within 23 hours, and then have the family and patient drive back to their home in Queen Anne. So that's what we're trying to eliminate with this pilot study. And then I'll ask Patty to update us on a few other things that are going on.
So a couple of our long-standing partnership activities include the Mobile Integrated Community Healthcare Project, now in its 6th year, I believe, Dr. Ciatola. And we are happy partners in that. The medication management protocol, the telepharmacy we call it, continues to be one of the important services we added in more recent years. And we're able to coordinate the care of patients who are discharged from a healthcare facility, return to their home, have various medication reconciliation issues from their physician offices, from specialist offices, from hospitals, even from urgent care and other types of services. And oftentimes, because of that multiplicity of resources, there is an overlapping of prescriptions and so forth that maybe need to be reviewed. So those are reviewed, and oftentimes find that patients don't have the things that have been prescribed to them, or they have them and they are 3 to 5 years old and have disintegrated in the bottles from lack of use. Or they don't know why they're taking them or what the side effects are and that sort of thing. So that's been successful and helpful in keeping people from going back to the emergency department and possibly readmitted to a hospital because they weren't taking the right medicines at the right time or in the right dose, or it was conflicting with some other medication. Moving on to our medical practices, we have a very busy primary care practice here in Centerville. Dr. Saini and 2 nurse practitioners, Brittany Cutler and Michelle Jordan, are seeing up to 50 patients a day, plus working in those patients who call in for sick visits and more sort of walk-in urgent care types of services for their patients, not for unassigned patients. And so that is a busy practice. And Shore Medical Pavilion, I'm very happy to tell you, is now seeing about 12,000 patients a year in the medical pavilion, various specialties, everything from cardiology and neurology to urology, women's health, ENT, palliative care, diabetes, endocrinology, And we have specialists from other areas who are seeing patients either pre and post procedure, such as the bariatric surgeon, and also cardiac surgery and pediatric cardiology specialists from other places are locating here and seeing patients on a regular basis. So it's a busy facility, lots of activity going on there. We supported the Senior Summit again this year, and I'm happy to say we had about 10 to 12 Shore Regional Health providers and services represented there. It was a busy day and lots going on, and I think our participants from our organization were very grateful to have the opportunity to interact with so many citizens and provide them with screenings, with health education and information to help them live healthier lives. So that's always a great event, and thank you for sponsoring it. I'd be happy to answer any questions about those brief updates.
The last thing we just wanted to provide you with an update on is, as you know, we have an acute care hospital in Chestertown. It's a small hospital, and it's got an average daily census that can fluctuate from 2 patients a day in the hospital up to 22 patients a day. So it's incredibly challenging to stabilize the acute care facility there. So in an effort to come up with a solution to stabilize and enhance the care that's provided in Chestertown, Kent County, and northern Queen Anne's County, our board has asked us to evaluate the possibility of relocating behavioral health beds from Cambridge to Chestertown. That's the relocation of about 12 to 14 inpatient beds that with some minor renovation could be added to the Chestertown Hospital and enhance the bed count and capacity of that healthcare system there, ultimately stabilizing it for the foreseeable future. So we're evaluating that possibility as we speak. We're hopeful that we'll have some direction within the next month or two. And then we'll keep you updated as the board at Shore help us determine if that's the appropriate step to take at this point in time. Okay.
Thank you.
I had one other thing. Yes, questions?
I always have a question. I have a question, actually, probably for Dr. Ciatola. Sir, the last time you were here, if my memory is correct, and it usually doesn't fail me, that you were thinking you had 2 observation cases a week, and that if we knew, if emergency services was aware that observation was part of the cards, wouldn't we not be bypassing, so that actually the count would be higher the minute that the possibility arose of creating that? If you see the point I'm making.
I do.
Yeah.
We'll let the technical expert answer.
He's coming up.
Yeah.
Phil, you knew he was coming up, didn't you?
Oh,
You had his seat ready. And
he was half out of his chair before you even got started.
We're very supportive of the observation bed, so I'm...
And congratulations to you before you get started on your appointment to be on MS.
Yeah.
Thank you. The question is 2 to 3 that they're noting now in what is coming into the emergency center at Queenstown. We've been very cautious and very proactive in being very careful about transporting from an EMS standpoint those patients that we felt needed admission to an acute care hospital. Your point is well taken, that if we now know that there's a possibility for 23-hour observation on some of these transports with a medical consult done between the EMS crew and a dual consult with Easton and the Queen Anne physicians to make a determination, depending on one, their volume that's currently there, their staffing capability, whether we could now transport that patient to the freestanding ED in Queenstown and avoid a trip to Easton or to Chestertown or even Anne Arundel if the Queen Anne ER staff was capable and comfortable receiving that patient. I think you would see an increase in that 2 to 3 a week to probably closer to 5 to 6.
Which is what you needed.
That's fair.
Which means that you should do this.
Well, we are gearing up for the pilot, and we look forward to what the pilot's going to show us. But we're committed to try it, and we're committed to see if we can, again, try to keep the Queen Anne's County residents in Queen Anne's County for their health care as much as possible.
That standalone there, the numbers that you see there with the population that we have, do you see anything like that anywhere else on the Eastern Shore, those numbers that strong?
No, I haven't seen them that strong and sustainable as well. I think that's the big piece too, is they're sustaining that 15,000 plus visits per year. And they're sicker patients. They're not typically urgent care patients that are coming in there, or patients that didn't get a primary care appointment soon enough so they'd come to the ED. We're seeing sick patients in that emergency center, and I think it's providing the service that we all hoped it would.
So the urgency that Anne Arundel shut down was covering about 11,000 from what we heard. Is that, do you think you could recapture a lot of that volume?
We're hopeful that that's possible. I think if given the choice.
What does it take to make the model work?
Well, that's where the business plan comes in. I'm really not sure the specific numbers to be able to legitimize hours of operation and all of that just off the top of my head.
We got a lot of comments about that, a lot of calls, and why don't we have one, and what can you do about it, so.
You've got two great board members from Queen Anne's County that support that vision
Oh, yeah,
as well,
one of them is-
who are actively and vocally
Absolutely.
sharing their support for it with us every month.
A quick question on some of the transports we have that we take there to the ED from automobile accidents and all that. Do we keep track of how many of those are from out of county? I mean, how much is our emergency room being taxed, or maybe from our traffic issue as well? That wouldn't be typical, because you're saying the volumes are higher than you see anywhere else. Is that part of the reason that, you know, we do obviously have a higher rate of traffic than most places on the shore?
The majority of the patients from a motor vehicle collision would probably be a priority 3 or lower priority that our crews would transport to the freestanding ED. Otherwise, they would be going either to Easton or to Anne Arundel, or essentially to trauma with aviation or by ground.
But is that a number we could pull out of, like, out-of-county patients, just as a
I
snapshot
think
maybe? Or
we can pull those numbers in conjunction with Mary Alice and see specifically the number of priority 3s that are transported to the Queen Anne ER and get their essentially address and see where, if they're in county. Most of those, to be honest, are probably out-of-county individuals, because these are traffic accidents on 301 and 50.
Right. And the reason I bring that up is just because as we continue to have the traffic volume grow, we're going to continue to have those types of accidents, which are going to continue to attack not only our emergency services, our volunteer departments, but our medical centers. And I think, you know, we, again, just much as we're going after the state for the traffic, we're probably at some point going to have to yell uncle on a little help with the emergency services, since we're dealing with 50, 60,000 cars a weekend. You know, we're a small county. We're not built for handling those kind of volumes, so.
Correct. Anything else?
If there was one other piece I could share with you.
Sure,
and just,
absolutely.
I think it's important because, first of all, I want to thank you as commissioners for the situations that you deal with here every single day. And tonight was a perfect example of child safety. That's critically important to the community that you serve, and it touches all of us. Well, I want you to know that in the healthcare industry, you know, we, like the transport service that takes kids from their homes to schools and back, really are designed to be havens of care. We're designed to provide safe environments for those that we care for. And we're known for being compassionate and caring in what we do. But in this increasingly challenging world, however, where civil behaviors or uncivil behaviors and violence towards others are becoming the norm rather than the exception, I worry daily about the troubling effect this is having on our team members, our physicians, our volunteers, and our visitors to our hospital system. Nothing is more important to me than the safety of everyone that we have inside our healthcare system. But hospitals and healthcare facilities are unfortunately not isolated from these types of incidents, most often the results of patients and family assaults upon serious threats to our staff and our providers of care. Like teams in healthcare across the state and the nation, our staff members are punched, spat upon, threatened with retaliation, and confronted with verbal assaults and intimidation pretty frequently. Within our system, I can honestly say that at least once a day, somewhere at Shore Regional Health, an event like this occurs. It's just the degree of how serious these events occur, from verbal assaults all the way up to physical assaults and threats to their life. I guarantee you, though, that not a hospital emergency in the department in the country every hospital is experiencing the same exact thing. And for far too long, we've pushed it aside and said, it's par for the course. It's what we do in healthcare. We're just going to have to deal with it. But I'm here to tell you today that Shore Regional Health, like many other hospitals across the country, are starting to say this is not acceptable. It can't be tolerated any further, and we're not going to tolerate it any further. So you're going to hear more and more from us at Shore and from Mary Alice and our team to talk about how we can enhance safety in the hospital system, in the emergency centers, and our medical office buildings, because it is getting out of control. And one of the things we've done locally is we put some committees together that talk about workplace violence. We've got major committees with all of our emergency departments in-house working on this. And we also have an advisory council of team members who are on the front lines who experience this to get their perspective. We're doing a number of things, from training on de-escalation and on safety and protection of our team, all the way up to educating our patients and visitors about our policy of zero tolerance and working towards that it won't be accepted. So I wanted to share this as a reality that we deal with, and while we shared great information and great numbers and great service that we provide, this is a growing concern of ours in the hospital system, in the hospital industry, and we're taking a proactive and pretty strict approach on where we move forward. So you're going to hear more and more about that from us, and we'll ask and look to partner with you as we come up with solutions that keep our team members safe.
So are these patients that are high on drugs that are coming for?
It really runs the gamut. It could be alcohol abuse or drug abuse, but it could be a behavioral disorder. It could be just stress-related, domestic-related issues. It really doesn't trend in one specific way or another. But what does trend and what is trending is the severity of the incidents that are occurring.
And you guys, and now, does Shore Health have security in the emergency centers?
We do. We have security officers, but they're not armed. Right. We don't have metal detectors. We don't have those kinds of provisions in place. So what we are teaching them is protection for the team and themselves, the de-escalation techniques to make sure that we try to diffuse a situation before it occurs. And that works most of the time, but sometimes it doesn't. And we've got team members who do a great job at providing great care for our community. And the last thing we want to do is put them in harm's way. So we're going to do our level best to make sure that we do everything we can to prevent that from happening. And again, we'll reach out to you and all the other counties to help us come up with appropriate solutions to keep our team safe.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good to see you all. Yeah. All right, Commissioners, we have one final presentation. Midshore Behavioral Health, our annual update, and we have Ms. Catherine Dilley, the Executive Director. So come on down.
Hi.
Hello.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
So my name is Katie Dilley, and I'm the Executive Director at Midshore Behavioral Health. And with me this evening, I have Megan Pinder, who is a behavioral health coordinator in our office. She focuses most of her work around the child and adolescent population, but she also represents Queen Anne's County and is a proud resident here as well. Correct. So,
Where is your office?
We are located in Easton.
Okay.
Yes. But this is our annual presentation in hopes that you all will endorse our office to continue to serve as the core service agency representing Queen Anne's County for the fiscal year 2020. Typically, we like to do this presentation in May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month, but you all are some busy gentlemen, and we could not get on your calendar in May, so we thank you for having us this evening. We always like to start with just an acknowledgement of our mission and vision. And the mission of Midshore Behavioral Health is to continually improve the provision of behavioral health services for the residents of Caroline, Dorchester, Kent, Queen Anne's, and Talbot counties through the effective coordination of care in collaboration with consumers, their natural support systems, providers, and our community at large. And our vision at Midshore is a rural behavioral health delivery system that is clinically and culturally competent, that will ensure access, have a community focus, be cost effective, and be integrated as a system as a whole. So we have offered you a snapshot of our fiscal year 19 in review. So Megan and I will be highlighting a couple of our big growth areas for the year, as well as some projects that we're working on that are also Queen Anne's County specific. In the last 3 fiscal years, we've had significant grant growth at our office. We've increased our funds that we've managed from about $4.7 million to a projection of about $9.2 million moving into fiscal year 20. A significant portion of that funding can be categorized into 3 different areas of focus. The first one is the expansion of our funding to support our crisis response system. So all of the funding that supports our Eastern Shore Operations Center, which is our crisis hotline, as well as our mobile crisis teams, and funds that support training our police officers and first responders in crisis intervention, move through our office to serve not just the Midshore counties, but the Eastern Shore in total, so all 9 counties. And this year we were able to expand our mobile crisis team support significantly to become a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week operation, serving 8 of the 9 counties of the Eastern Shore. So that's been huge growth and a lot of focus of the work this year at our office. Another big piece of our expanded growth at Midshore Behavioral Health is as a result of the opioid crisis. So as much as we're pleased to have additional funds, of course, it's certainly coming in a time of a really critical state that we know that we've been in now for a couple of years here in Maryland. So we have been able to expand the crisis bed activity up at the AF Whitsett Center in Kent County. We initially started crisis beds there through our Maryland Opioid Rapid Response Grant. And this year we secured state opioid response funds to expand the crisis beds there from 4 crisis beds to 8. And we're actually working with Kent County Health Department to look at expanding those beds even more because they have been utilized almost at 100%. In addition, we have entered into an exciting partnership here in Queen Anne's County with the Queen Anne's County Health Department, working with the leadership and their local addiction authority to look at bringing a safe station here into the county, located here in Centerville. So we're working with Maggie Terzaghi, who's heading up that project, to expand operations at the Nielsen Center here in Centerville, with the hope that in the next several months we'll have a location that would welcome and support folks getting quick and easy access into treatment. So that's a wonderful activity that we certainly appreciate the support of you all with being brought into the county, and especially at the Nielsen Center, because we think that's a nice complementary location to have that activity. We also are working with bringing expanded recovery housing here into Queen Anne's County. So we're working with a group called Oxford House, who is hopeful that they can bring somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 45 extra recovery house beds here into the county in the next year and a half. So
Long-term, short-term, what's their?
Well, it's residential recovery house, which most folks stay up to about 6 months, I would say. So it's an exciting expansion. It would certainly bring a lot of additional resources for recovery house and long-term care for that population here into the county. So we're hopeful that within the next 6 months that we'll at least see 1 house come online, if not 2. But we're certainly happy to keep you all updated on that development as well.
And how do you find these homes?
Well, those homes actually would be located from the vendor that we're working with, which is the Oxford House Group.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And they identify the housing, and they do this. They staff it with a peer support model. It's a group that's been very successful on the Western Shore. There's several houses in Montgomery County as well as Anne Arundel County. Oxford House is also expanding in the Midshore region and I believe Talbot County. They're bringing on an additional house as well. So it's really good growth, and it's all a complement with the state opioid response funding that we're currently managing, which is extensive. We also had a lot of growth this past year with our homeless supportive housing program. Midshore Behavioral Health is the continuum of care for the 5 counties. So we expanded our funds this year to bring on the Homeless Solutions Program as an additional complement to the funding that we're managing to currently serve our homeless population here. So that's really the significant growth fiscally that's happened. And we're also working collaboratively with our Midshore Health departments to look at long-term, big picture local systems management integration. We'll be doing more planning and monitoring on a larger scale with our health department partners. And we're hopeful that some of that growth and continued collaboration and partnership will happen over the next 3 to 5 years. So I anticipate that we'll be back at the table giving you updates around that activity as well. So I'm going to have Megan continue our Queen Anne's County highlights for the year, and certainly if you have any questions, we'll be happy to support those.
All righty.
So we also, in addition to the accomplishments that Katie has mentioned, partnered with Chop Tent Community Health to advocate for a regional warm handoff model. This model will create a standardized partnership with between primary care providers and behavioral health providers for referrals and quality transition of care. So we've been working really closely with them to try to identify primary care providers in the community and our behavioral health system to collaborate so that patients can be transitioned to and from and receive adequate care. We've also worked to promote the Children's Mental Health Matters campaign, which occurred in May. It was May 5th through the 11th. Our office, in collaboration with a variety of community partners, held a showing of the documentary Angst, which was a film about childhood anxiety disorders at the Avalon Theater. It was free and open to the public. We welcomed a lot of Queen Anne's County residents through the school system, our behavioral health providers, local library, and we had a really good showing. And then we had a panel of experts to discuss the film and answer questions that people may have. In addition, we regularly attend and participate in the local Drug and Alcohol Abuse Council, Queen Anne's County Safety Net, the Queen Anne's County Goes Purple campaign, Shore Regional Health's Opioid Task Force, and our local NAMI, Kent and Queen Anne's Counties affiliate chapter. And then we've also been serving on the START Advisory Board with the Department of Social Services and also the Queen Anne's County Health Department.
Very good.
Yeah. And just to compliment, I know Patty Willis and I have recently had several conversations as they are evaluating their potential transition plan for those behavioral health beds. So I appreciate Shore Regional Health reaching into our office to be a supportive, at least informative partner in their decision-making process. So we certainly thank you for reaching out and happy to support being a partner at the table with that discussion as well.
You know, I see a lot of your grants from year to year, steady growth, and it's fun. You know, it's not funny, but it's. I know in other organizations they're seeing just the opposite. Grants are drying up, so I'm glad to see that yours are there for the good use. So that's a huge plus for us in the county.
Yeah, we're pleased. Keeps us busy, that's for sure, but it's really good work.
Right.
And certainly benefits the community. And we always are looking for opportunities for gaps and how to fill those, as well as get funding channeled in and get really creative. I know especially with the Safe Station funding that we received, we recognize that the Eastern Shore is not traditional and how we're set up like Anne Arundel County, which has had so much success with that project. So one of our priority focuses with putting the money out into the community was let's get creative and think out of the box because we certainly need the resource and we're not fixed in how that model needs to look. And I think one of the really wonderful things about our office is that if we have a barrier presented to us, we try to just look to another way to get to the end goal and not let us slow us down. So it's a wonderful team and we're very motivated to serve the community. So we thank you for your support.
Thank you very much. Anybody got any questions?
Well done. Thank you.
We need a motion to.
Oh, we really.
If you want to sign the letter of agreement for fiscal 2020, if you want to consider doing that tonight.
Somebody
would be
want to make a
great.
motion that I sign the letter?
I move that Commissioner Moran sign the letter.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you
And we'll
both.
see you next year.
Excellent. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Yep, thank you very
In
much.
May.
That's right, in May.
In May.
That's all we had, Commissioners. If you want to go to our second press and public comment period. Okay, thank you for taking the time to express your views to the County Commissioners during the public comment period. Comments are limited to 3 minutes in length. Comments longer than 3 minutes should be submitted in writing. When you come forward, please speak clearly in the standing microphone, state your name, address, and topic of interest. Keeping with the dignity of the office, we ask that all views be expressed in a respectful and civil manner. The Commission respects your desire and right to convey your message freely, but asks as a courtesy to this board and our citizens that you respect the Commissioner's request and refrain from naming citizens and name-calling when offering any critique.
Nobody.
Nobody signed
No
up?
one signed up, but anybody like to speak?
I'd like to say something.
Yes, ma'am.
First off, excuse me, trouble walking if I sit too long. First off, I'd like to thank all of you as county commissioners, because I know it's not an easy job and it's often a thankless job, especially when we see taxes going up and stuff like that. But I want to thank you also for giving us two very important presentations. I didn't expect to, I wanted to stay and see a whole meeting, but I didn't expect to see such wonderful presentations that are so important to our county. And I can vouch as a county resident since 1991 that the Maryland Shore Regional Health has done a wonderful, wonderful job. And they should be encouraged to continue, and I think they're a model for our whole Eastern Shore area. And I want to thank you for that presentation. I would throw my own personal weight, I know my husband's weight, as a resident, behind anything you can do to encourage them to increase their presence here in the county. And also, the Midshore Behavioral Project is so important to children of all ages, adults of all kinds. The behavior of not only of addicts or teenagers, but people with mental health disorders or any kind of chemical imbalance that they have are often recognized as something else to police officers. And the fact that there would be more behavioral health available to everyone as a resident, and also the fact that the University of Maryland wanted to extend, I believe he said, a 23 or 24-hour hold on observation. Observation can do so much for the behavioral end of illnesses and things. Often, observation can keep a person from actually being hospitalized when they don't have to be. So I really think that as a citizen, I think both of these issues are very valid, very important, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak? All right, well, oh, come on.
Hi, my name is Natalie Cahall. I'm a resident of Centerville, and I'm also a teacher at Shining Lake Stars and a parent of Shining Lake Stars Preschool. All three of my kids have gone there and are going there. And this has been going on for a long time, I know. And as a parent and a teacher, I really just want a decision to be made soon so that we know where we're going to be in September, and we can start working on that building because we just want the decision to be made so that we can get in there and prepare for the next school year. Because as a parent, it's just really hard to not know what's going to happen with your child's school. So I just ask that the decision is made sooner than the 4 to 6 weeks, if possible.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Anybody else? Close public comment. I'm going to go around. Oh. Just under the wire.
with it being, having the subcommittee and having the interviews for the next 4 to 6 weeks before a decision is made. I'm sorry, Kathy Higginbotham. Is there that 4 to 6 weeks is going to run up almost close to the beginning of school. Do you have a plan to extend the lease during that time or further, or have you thought about that?
Well, honestly, no. So
It's a valid concern.
it is. So I would imagine in 2 weeks we'll have maybe an answer to that.
Okay.
In 2 weeks. I mean, we're not going to have an answer for that tonight.
Thank you.
I'm afraid to ask again. Does anybody like to say anything? Anyone else? Okay, we're closing public comment, round table. Mr. Wilson?
Yes, all right. So that whole mental health thing's got me thinking as a commissioner. I thought I was sane when I came in here. I have no idea how I'm going out of here. But first off, the Aspen Commissioner we had 2 Fridays ago with me and Phil up at Nana Maria's. Well, good turnout and some great questions, as always. The citizens that turned out had good questions, pretty laid-back atmosphere, and enjoyed it thoroughly. And I'm going to put Mr. Wilson on the spot because he's got to choose the next venue, and we were asked that and had no answer, so I'm going to let you answer that one tonight. Secondly, I want to congratulate Mike Faust, the new Maryland State Firemen's Association president. He was sworn in this past week and was paraded down through Ocean City. And also Robbie Blackson, who is going to be the executive director of the Maryland State Firemen's Association. So Queen Anne's County is well represented in the Maryland State Firemen's Association. And our firefighters, volunteers turned out in force. We were 20 blocks long in Ocean City with the equipment from Queen Anne's County, so it was quite impressive. Thirdly, this is more for Mr. Moran's benefit, but for the counties as a whole. This is why I called you today. So I had our MACO Board of Directors meeting was this past week, and we had several speakers come in. And one of the speakers we had was one of the Deputy Secretaries of Health, who brought to our attention that the federal government had granted the state of Maryland $50 million for the opioid crisis, of which 18.4 million of that money is going into targeted campaigns. For our corrections center, Mr. Wilson, $6 million is going to be available for beds and things of that nature for a corrections center, whether it's new or old. The prevention and several other parts of the mental health side and all, this money's available, but it really hasn't been released to the public, and it's all grant money. So we really need to get on that. I'm giving everybody here a heads up that we need to get on that. And for the Queen Anne's County Goes Purple, actually the new opioid czar, Mr. Hsu, has $2 million he can spend to help us with our Goes Purple. So just wanted to give you an update on that. Fourth, one of the things that bothers me, and I've been a part of Kent Island Beach cleanups for the last 5-6 years now, and I drive around the county and I get Route 50 and 301. We have a lot of through travelers that are throwing trash on the roads, but you know what? It's sad when I drive around our Queen Anne's County roads and I see the trash on the side of the roads. So as a PSA for the county, don't throw your trash out the window. We have trash receptacles at every gas station you have to stop at every morning. There's places to put your trash that doesn't belong on our county roads. So everybody take it upon themselves to, if you see somebody litter, say something to them. It's just horrible to go by and see trash bags thrown out on the side of the road. We have transfer stations, so I'm off my soapbox on that. And finally, happy 4th of July, pre-4th of July, June 30th in Centerville. Fireworks start at dusk, I guess, and July 2nd up at the Heritage Center.
Very good. Mr. Wilson, the senior.
Let's see, this week, actually, County Administrator Mon and I went to discuss some of the intricacies of the new detention center with Judge Ross. And we have actually been working on sizing that, because in the plan for this, what the exact dimensions of this, or proportions of this very considerable expansion, I really want to make sure we make no mistakes in doing this and really check out what that means in terms of staffing and in terms of what the expectations of our population are going to be, because we've been running about 125, 130. Suddenly it dropped down to around 100, stayed there for 2 or 3 months, and I don't want to get to the point where we come in with maybe the estimate of 160 or 70 beds, which would be, or whatever you'd call it, population, and wind up with what looks like a 60% increase in in our carrying capacity. So we're working our way around the system with Lance, with everybody, Sheriff Hoffman and so on, to make sure this thing is sized right and that it's really going into pretty carefully. So anyway, that was our task this week.
Very good.
Sir?
Thank you. Commissioner Dumino.
So 2 things. I had sent an email to our County Administrator Todd Mon and our Commission President Jim Moran that the unfortunate that I will be on family vacation in July for the 2 commissioner meetings that we have scheduled for the 2nd and the 4th. It was an unavoidable situation, so I do apologize to my fellow commissioners, but I will not be here for the 11th meeting and the 25th, so I do apologize for that. One of the notes that I made during the meeting pertaining to this committee that we voted to put together, knowing that Shine Like Stars preschool has to get some sort of decision, and soon, because of the parents and the commitments to have those parents' children in the school. I have a very genuine concern on how long this committee is going to take and the findings, and that I would like to see that now that we're going to go that route, that we strongly consider coming up with an answer soon, and if it's not soon, then any decisions that we make will have to wait till after the fall enrollment.
But just so you know, their lease expires here in
End of this month.
end of this month.
June 30th.
Yeah.
So
Okay. All right.
just
With
think
you.
about that. We've got a lot of folks that were hanging out there waiting for a decision to be made to figure out what they're going to do with their kids in the fall.
Right, I've never been made aware at all whether its future existence was entirely dependent on this particular deal, or that's something I have no sense of whatever it is. Do you?
I don't understand with you.
No, I'm just saying if they don't get the Christ Church, would they go somewhere else, or does that fold them up?
Well, there seems to be 3 or 4 different organizations in there willing to allow them to stay if they get it. So that's, so it's got to be a decision that we have to make at the next meeting.
Right.
So, you
Yeah.
have 2 weeks to, mail out a thought and get a consensus and come back.
I guess that's my comment. That's really just my point.
I don't
We
think
don't wait
this-
too long.
We'll work quicker than 4 to
Yeah, I don't
6.
think this is going to take, that long to do that. You got anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you.
All right. 2 things. The first is we lost an Eastern Shore statesman recently on June 13th, 2019. R. Clayton Mitchell passed away. And a lot of people might not know who he is. If you go across the Newark Kent Narrows Bridge, you'll see his name on that bridge. Governor Hogan dedicated that bridge to him. He was a county commissioner from Kent County. And later went on to the House of Delegates, where he served Kent, Caroline, Queen Anne's, and Talbot County at the time. He was Speaker of the House of Delegates from 1987 to 1993. And so this was back before we had Jim Moran beating the drum on bridge traffic. He was a pioneer in trying to help solve some of these traffic problems, getting a lot of these newer bridges built in overpasses. He worked with Schaefer on the Reach the Beach program, which was not just to get people to the beach, but get them off of our side roads, and we sort of lost contact with that. So he was a real asset for the Eastern Shore with the Maryland legislature. So on behalf of the county, my condolences go out to his family, and thank you, Speaker Mitchell, for your service to not just Kent County, but to all the Eastern Shore. So on a happier note, for my second issue, my daughter Juliana is going to come up here. She made new nameplates for all of the county commissioners in her art class, which you can put on your desks here at your county offices. Unprompted, I didn't tell her she had to make them. She just decided to make them, so she wanted to come and hand them out to everybody. So, do you want to hand them out to everybody, sweetheart? This one's for me, right?
This one's
Won't you hand it to Mr. Chairman?
Thank you.
Tell the amount of work she put on the deed, right? Who's that for? Which Wilson?
I don't know.
Which one?
That's for Mr. Stevie, I think, because this one says Jack on it.
Right, Wilson, thank you.
The older Wilson, that's good.
Thank you. The senior statesman.
All right. Thank you, Juliana, for making that for all
Thank
the
you.
commissioners.
Oh,
Very nice.
thank you very much.
And you and your sister did a great job of sitting through the meeting and not being bored. I'm sure
Yes.
you really enjoyed all the presentations.
And I'm tasking Margie with making sure the Centerville guys do not touch our plates.
That's right.
That up there.
There you go. There you go.
I think we should take down these signs next week outside.
Yeah.
Or mix them up and make people think.
Confuse people, right?
You good?
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, I want to piggyback on what you said about Speaker Mitchell. He did do a lot, and I tell you, his era when he was in office was the time where the Eastern Shore mattered to the state. It was a time where we had governors, we had a lot of prominent people coming from the shore, and the things got taken care of. Since his departure, and for the last 25, 30 years, I honestly feel like sometimes the state neglects the Eastern Shore. And here we are now with the problem of the last bridge was built 40 some odd years ago, and before that it only took 24 years between bridges, give or take. And so what we're dealing with, and I'm going to start with the traffic. Unfortunately, I did a couple radio interviews, and one of the interviewers put out later that I was for tickets for people getting off of Route 50 onto Route 18, and I never said such a thing. Everybody pays their taxes. We're trying to encourage non-residents to stay on Route 50 because it's the quicker route. So we are getting that awareness out there, and I think that some of these talks in other counties are now starting to hear it, and people, this last Sunday, we only had a backup to the Kent Narrows. I don't know why, because Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, eastbound Route 50 was backed up for 12 hours each day, 12 hours. So, there's a lot of traffic that was coming over, but it didn't go home Sunday night, and if it did, maybe it staggered, so maybe we're getting some traction. The cup's half full, not half empty. So, we're working on that. We are in talks with the state on closing the Route 50, if you're coming Route 50 westbound at the outlets to turn left onto Route 18, we're trying to get that left turn closed because, frankly, it's just dangerous. It's a dangerous intersection. The line of sight isn't that much, and we're working with the state to try and close that to help us with some of our traffic issues, but for that safety issue. The second thing I want to talk about is now, Margie, correct me if I'm wrong, the Queen Anne's County government is environmentally no more styrofoam, no more single-use plastic, and so we did it. I'd like to see us challenge the Board of Education to do the same thing. We've gotten rid of our styrofoam, we've got rid of our single-source plastic, or single-use plastic, so I'm happy to see that, and it wasn't, according to the county administrator, it wasn't that expensive to make the switch, so,
And we're still all alive.
That's right, we're
Nobody
still
died
all alive,
because
so, I'm happy for that. And the last thing, I drive around the county a lot. You can't judge the problems until you see the problems. And one of my pet peeves is the appearance of some of our buildings. And the Vincent building is my biggest one. It's a brand new building. It's a year and a half, 2 years old, whatever the case may be. And you go up there and frankly, it looks like hell. And I mean the outside appearance. And we spend a lot of money on these buildings. And I think that, maybe we should start spending a little more money on the maintenance and the upkeep on the outside. And that goes for both of our high schools.
Yes.
The front entrances of the buildings need to be painted. A little, I hate to say fertilizer, and landscaper would go a long way. Yeah. And I know I've had talks with our county administrator, Todd Mon, that maybe we hire an outside agency to maintain these. And, what I'm looking at is our 2 high schools and our junior highs, because, Mattapique, I went down there and I went, wow. I mean, it's depressing when you pull up there, and our schools shouldn't be depressing. I think that, Kent Island High School, the doors need painting, it needs some landscaping, there's some broken things here and there, and I just think if, it used to be where you could lean on a parent, that had a company that would do this and do that, but those days are few and far between. But I'd like to see us do something to get a plan together for both the Vincent building and, the high schools and the junior highs to start off with. And like I said, you see what our courthouse looks like now, and it's beautiful. And I think that, just a little bit of prevention, and we can keep it that way and take pride in what we've done here in this county. So that's really all I got, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
One second.
Well, 1 second. Mr. Wilson.
Just a thought, which might not be great, but wouldn't the fact of these really horrendous backups on the other side be a good opportunity? Go hit up Stuart Pittman and Anne Arundel.
Yes, because I've had discussions with him, but yes, it does. And thank you for reminding me, because we both sat in on the Bay Bridge the Bragg meeting. Commissioner Wilson and myself, and there's an organization that when the bridges were redecked, they got together, Anne Arundel County, they got together Queen Anne's County and Maryland Transportation Authority to help with, while this was going on and there was permanent lane closures, what could we do to help ease the congestion, to help with the stress and everything else. Well, this organization is going along and used to meet once a month. Now they haven't met. This meeting we just had was basically the first one in 4 months, and now all of a sudden MDTA wants to dissolve that group. Everybody can apply again, and they're going to meet twice a year. So it is basically
degenerated to a propaganda.
Yeah, a propaganda tool. So I said, well, can the county appoint who they want to sit on this board, because it's important to Queen Anne's County as it is Anne Arundel County? The answer was no. So, we've got some issues with MDTA that we need to work on. And, anybody that was over there last Friday with the wind, again, that backup went all the way back to Davidsonville, almost a buoy. And that's just ridiculous. I mean, they are a service-oriented safety, and I get the safety thing, but we've asked them for 2 years now to put up on their live cameras and their live feeds and their website what the actual speed is. Why can't we have a feed that tells us what the speed is on that Bay Bridge, wind speed? It's everybody in this room's responsibility to question government and, to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And I'm sorry, but, when you can't do something like that after being asked for 2 and 3 years, you're hiding something. And I'm not afraid to say it. And I think that, I think what happened on Friday was a typical bureaucracy, that the wind was blowing, and maybe the wind was strong. And they said, okay, we're not going to open contraflow. And it backed up so far that somebody probably made a phone call and said, open it up. And they opened it up, but then it was too late. Then the damage was done, and, you're talking about economic development. You're talking about, your biggest economic engine, Ocean City, and then Salisbury, and then our own Kent Narrows. And control of this traffic, and that's why I was referring back to Speaker Mitchell, back in the day, things got done. And, unfortunately, in Queen Anne's County, to get something from the state, it takes someone to pass away, and which is a sad thing. So, we are actively pursuing the state in solutions, but really, without a new bridge, there is no solution. And I don't care where the bridge goes, as long as it goes somewhere, because we all are going to suffer for the next 10 to 15 years while everybody else bickers.
So real quick, as recently as Thursday, the county executive spoke to him at Mako, and he is more than willing to sit down with Queen Anne's County and discuss any and all options for doing it. So he is on board. And secondly, did we ever find out the speed that they are rating the bridge at for the 1,500 cars per lane? Because speed is everything in terms of when you get it across.
Well, the 1,500 per lane was rated at the speed, whatever they want
50,
the speed to be.
Right.
50, so I would assume 50. But our counters have never counted, so 1,500 would be 4,500. Our counters have never gone over 4,100. 4,100 and change.
Right, and there's a reason for that. So I sat down because I had nothing better to do, and I think I told you this. If you sit down and you take it, for every 5 miles per hour you drop it, you basically drop 150 cars
Correct.
per lane. So
Right.
when you do that and you back those up, obviously 150 cars is roughly 300 feet, and it adds up like that. So
Right.
for every 5 miles per hour, you're adding, I think I figured out, about 3/5 of a mile of a backup naturally, no matter what happens, even if the cars are flowing at 50. So I guess one of the questions is, have they ever thought about raising the speed limit on the bridge, one, and two, if they made a slow lane only like they do on the Jersey Turnpike. I mean, just things that, because like I said, if you've got cars moving at 50 and you drop them to 40, and it doesn't take anything for a tractor trailer to slow down and back up the entire line of traffic, and that 10 miles per hour in 1 hour is going to give you 3/5 of a mile of backup per lane. And it's a numbers game. It really is. I mean, it's
You talk about not having any time. Last Sunday was the same thing, you know, not this one, the one before, that, you know, I sat there and counted how many cars that would be. So our population doubles on a Sunday in Queen Anne's County. It doubles by the amount of vehicles. And we figured out in that queue for that 10 to 11 mile backup to the 5301 split, it's an additional probably 26,000 people.
And that's probably right.
Yeah, that are sitting out there on that road.
Yeah, I mean, this issue is, one of the things is, the bridge is absolutely resistant to any discussion.
Correct.
Of the protocols that the bridge operates under. If you bring up anything, they just immediately brush you off.
Right.
That when, a couple of times, Commissioner Moran and I have noted the fact that the bridge was shut down for wind, 40 miles an hour, when at the Bay Bridge Airport, 1 mile away, it was blowing 10.
Right.
And there were no white caps on the bay. And
Correct.
it was absolutely not 40.
Right, right.
And yet they insist on that. And what I wonder is, maybe we ought to try to get Ann Arundel to come on to that bridge commission with us and use some argumentative force here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Because they haven't showed up. They sent the people from,
Right.
you know, they've got
Yeah.
a couple of
Yeah.
people coming over from
Well,
the
that's
community.
the conversations we need to have with the state, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to,
Yeah.
you know, they don't want politicians to go onto this board. I said, we don't want any politicians. Well, what the hell? I mean, you know, I've never heard of such a thing,
Well,
you know?
they told us they wanted people who could communicate with the public, but it wasn't politicians.
Right. And then they won't let the politicians pick someone that can go there and argue on our behalf. So it's bizarre. It is bizarre, but we are trying to muddle through it.
But it makes you think, I mean, what do they stand to gain or lose by putting a wind restriction on the bridge? There's only one thing that happens when they do that, and that is that you're going to back traffic up.
Correct.
So what?
And slow it down. As a general, it's going to slow down when you do that.
And again,
you got to think that you know, to cause such melee and backups and delays, and then the ancillary effects of public safety and ambulances and fire trucks being able to cause all that in a domino effect.
Well, there's an answer, and what it is.
Why would you do it?
politically correct.
Answer
you know,
to it being-
hide behind safety, I don't, you know.
Yeah, it's
Right.
always cited, the guy got up right in the middle of a meeting, said, safety comes before everything.
Right.
But the truth is, if you knocked all the speed down to 10 miles an hour, it would be totally safe, never have another accident, and traffic could be backed up 500 miles.
Right.
So it's not, there's always a balance.
Right, right, and I agree. I mean, you know, case in point, I don't know how many people here have been in the contraflow, when a tractor trailer is coming eastbound in the contraflow lane, which it says plainly that they're not supposed to do it, but I've passed 5 of them. I got 3 of them I videotaped, one-handed on the wheel, but videotaped it. So, I mean, you know, it's just.
The person riding with you videotaped.
Yeah, well, I was by myself, so I wasn't gonna miss it, so, you know, but, you know, we are trying to do something, you know, and hopefully the state will throw us a bone and, you know, they understand the issue, but they understand also, really, how do you fix it? You need another crossing. And again, you know, the whole intent of this, when they started the NEPA study, was please stay on the tracks. Keep that train on the tracks, so it takes 10, 12 years, but they've already extended that. The first NEPA has already been almost extended a full year before we hear anything there. And then, you know, if the next administration comes in and they go, no, we're not spending that money on that, we as a county will suffer, so, you know.
But it'll start all over, really.
Yeah,
Process.
yeah, very much so. All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.